Okay, we're steaming out of the harbor right now, and we are heading in a southerly direction. This is the Norwalk Harbor, and it's fed by the Norwalk River. If you take a look behind us, you can actually see that the water here is not a nice blue, clear water like you would normally see in southern waters. It's somewhat of a brownish to a greenish colored water, depending on the time of year. Right now, it's a brownish water. And we're going to show you why it has this color. And in order to do this, Kathy and I are going to use two plankton nets. These are devices that are designed to capture organisms that normally live in the water. There's a very fine mesh on this, and this has to be pulled through the water at about 1 knot. If you go faster than that, the water actually can't pass through the mesh, and it captures tiny creatures. Now, the term plankton refers to organisms that are not necessarily microscopic. It refers to animals that are drifters. The term planktonic means they are drifters. They cannot swim faster than the current. So Kathy and I are going to be setting these, and we're going to find out what happens to be in the water right now. This is critical because, as you can see behind us, we have lots of boats in this area. And the reason we have a lot of these boats in this area, we have a tremendous shellfish industry, and we also have a tremendous fishing industry in this town. And they rely completely on the plankton that are here because they're on the bottom edge of the food chain.
Okay,
So Kathy and I are going to put these in the water. We're about to deploy the plankton nets, and what we're going to be looking at is the plankton that live in Long Island Sound. These are drifters that we normally find in Long Island Sound. We find two types. We find zooplankton and phytoplankton. And they may be microscopic in size. They may be quite large. And the plankton nets that we are using are 100 micron plankton nets. They're designed to capture organisms that we would consider microscopic up to fairly large jellyfish that would fit into the mouth opening of the net, which is about 6 inches. As we deploy them, we're going to deploy them off the stern of the vessel. The vessel will be cruising along at about 1 knot. At that point, we should be able to get the water to pass through the net. This is important because if you go too fast, the pressure head builds up in front of the net, and it actually pushes the animals out of the way and the plants so they aren't captured by the net.
The plankton nets are going to be at the surface of the water because that's where the drifting planktonic forms like to be. The phytoplankton, photosynthesizing, making their own food, need to be near the surface of the water where they're closer to the sunlight. And when they're producing their own food, then the zooplankton are going to be eating them as well as other organisms, and that's the beginning of our food chain. And so we have most of the water caught in the bottom part of the receptacle.
Two nets in, Captain.
But most of our plankton is actually caught on the sides of the net. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually rinse down the sides of the net and then also take a look at what's actually inside this container right here. And we actually do have some jellies today, which is going to be a very good thing. We can actually see something right up in here. Not sure if that'll come out on film, but so what we're going to do now is actually squeeze out the excess water from the plankton nets. And then we'll be rinsing down the plankton from the side of the net. Now this hose is attached to a pump on the side of the boat, so we'll be rinsing down brackish water. So I want to just rinse that down gently on the side, again putting most of the organisms down into the receptacle.
What we're trying to do is concentrate the sample that we're actually going to see.
So you can actually see how that concentration down at the bottom is much darker now, so I'll pass that over to Joe. And what we do now is I'm going to invert the net so that way I can pour that sample into another container. And we'll study the organisms inside. Oh, get your water guard up on the lens. Okay, so we'll have as we're pouring our plankton into our unofficial scientific collection jar. And so we can see some debris, some organisms definitely floating around in there. And we'll bring that inside, go underneath our video microscope.